Hello, and welcome to Words on the Wind podcast. My name is Paul Benedict, and today's recording will be with a good friend of mine, Michael Shimmin, also known as Doc. Michael is a man of God, a husband, a father, and just an overall great person to be around. I'm very thankful to have him in my life and very thankful to have him on here today. So please listen and enjoy. Much love, Paul.
Some people know just how it is, and I know I gotta stand my ground. Some people say what's on their mind, and I swear I never treated you right. It's been slowing me down for a while.
All right.
Well, Michael, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, man.
It's cool to have you here. We've been talking about it for quite a while now, and
Yeah.
you're finally here. Guest number 2.
Hey, I'll take it, man. I know it's something that we've kicked around a lot and even just getting into for podcasts or for getting into that information, that side of stuff. So
Yeah.
both inspired by it. So happy to be your second guest, man.
Yeah, second guest, trying to work through all the kinks. I wanted to start off by asking you why people call you Doc.
Oh, man. That's something that was, I don't know if it was earned or gifted, but from when I was a combat medic in the military, you're taking care of, a plethora of guys. And once they have that trust in you to watch their back,
Mm-hmm.
they refer to you as doc. You're the only medical guy that they got for you or for them. So, yeah, when I was deployed, had about anywhere from 110 to 170 guys that I was charged with taking care of and made sure that they got home. And, once I earned that trust, it's just what they call you. So,
So it's not Bugs Bunny thing.
no, not a Bugs Bunny thing. No, well,
What's up, Doc?
no, we're, it's something I take a lot of pride in.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to honestly let it go here and there. I used to introduce myself as that because it became a very identifying part of who I am. But now that I try not to necessarily identify or define who I am by my job, I kind of let it go. But it's something I still have a lot of pride in because, I gave everything I had to, 170 guys, and they felt enough pride and security in me to be able to give me that moniker, to watch their back. So,
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that's continued along wherever you've gone since then. 'Cause,
yeah,
if anyone doesn't know, I work with this guy.
Yeah. yeah, we're
So,
coworkers, but we're friends still.
You are like the medical guy on the department. So yeah, you've earned it, and you have a wealth of knowledge to share. So,
Yeah, so I got a lot to learn though, man.
you do.
I still have a lot to
Yeah,
learn.
gotta keep
My
that
guys were
mindset.
telling me that you guys were doing some training here recently and that they felt that they had the Tom Brady of medics. But I realized that as much as that's nice and it's a cool thing to know that I've got my guys' confidence in that avenue, that maybe that's something I can kind of just put off to the side now and still have as a secure foundation, but not make a defining part of myself. So
Gotcha. Yeah, I was curious if that was a name you obtained through the military or if it was before then or not. Because I know a little bit about your history with the medical side of things and being on deployment and stuff like that. But I didn't know like what initially intrigued you to go that route. If you were inspired by someone as a kid, or if like what made you go into the medical field as far as
honestly, it was when I went into the military, I was trying to get out of a crummy situation with family.
mm,
Graduated high school early, and because of the economy at the time in 2008, couldn't really get a job. So there were people with business degrees going to work at McDonald's and whatnot. So the military was something I knew I was always going to do because I wanted to do that service. But what got me into the medical side was I wanted to do firefighting. My 2 oldest brothers, they got into the Air Force and they did firefighting as well. And when I went in open general, there was 1,600 graduates that week. And they said, we've got 2 spots for medics or 1 spot for firefighter. All the rest are personnel services and security police, and nobody wants to be an MP. So,
I didn't know that until after I joined.
Yeah,
So
nobody
I
wants to
picked
be
correctly,
an
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, you got lucky. But I was the last of 4 kids to go in, and my dad was in the service, so I had plenty of, guidance and don't do this. This is a crummy job, and try and get one of this. This is better. And having the inspiration from my brothers and seeing what they did with fire was pretty cool. So I was gravitating towards that route. But yeah, when we were graduating, they said there's 1,600 people graduating, 2 fire slots or 2 medic slots, 1 fire slot. You can roll the dice at getting the 1 fire slot, or we can guarantee you the medic slot because you're an EMT. I took it. I think God had better plans for me than I knew. I mean, obviously, I wanted that one position, but
Yeah.
panned out well. Took me places.
How old were you when you told your parents you wanted to join the military?
15.
15.
So, and I actually signed my contract on my 17th birthday. So I took my dad and my mom both being willing, which they were ready. I was the last of 4, and due to
Yeah.
relationship struggles they had, they were ready to be done with raising kids anyway. So, but I'd probably say it was the best decision I made in my early adult life. So,
Yeah, I when I told my parents I was joining the military, my mom lost her cool. She was not
Really?
excited or not happy.
what was that?
She just overwhelmed with anxiety when I told her just the what ifs.
Yeah.
My dad, he was like, I want you to do what you think you should do.
Mm-hmm.
He's not necessarily like would want me to go down that path initially. All
Yeah.
my uncles and aunts, no one served, but my grandparents, they all served.
So, where did your inspiration exactly come from then to join up?
Being exposed to rated R war films at the age of 5.
Yeah.
Saving
that'll
Private
do it,
Ryan.
man. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that there's
I'm-
some psyop recruiting
Yeah.
aspect to all the video games and movies back in our time.
Yeah,
But,
not even joking. That was the inspiration. I
Yeah.
saw that movie with my dad at a very young age, and we would watch other films. Ones that stick out are the Band of Brothers series,
Mhm.
The Alamo. I can't remember Forrest Gump. Yeah, that's the Vietnam parts in Forrest Gump are my
Yeah.
favorite. But yeah, I don't know. I just always thought it was interesting. I would reenact the movies after watching them. Go out in the
Yeah.
backyard with my brother, and we would just role play the movies that we just watched.
Yeah, and I think with our generation, we weren't quite to everything wasn't phones and video games yet, so we were still outside,
Mm-hmm.
projecting what
Yeah,
got put into us.
yeah. I
which
think
heavily was that movie style. So
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you and I grew up through a pretty cool age with our childhood because it
Oh, yeah.
was the blending of
Mhm.
technology and going outside and not having too much to do, just having to be creative and find things to
Yeah,
come
for
up
sure.
with. My dad would let us play video games. It was like the Nintendo 64 for an hour or so, and then he's like, "Hey, you guys get to go spend the rest of the day outside. That's enough
Yeah,
TV time."
that's definitely something I plan on carrying over with my kids because
Yeah.
you hear about kids now who are on a screen for 4, 6, 8 hours a whole day, or they fight with their parents to stay on them. And I think having the screen limit that we did when we were younger definitely helped us learn and experience and get to know the outside world and test our boundaries and our limits in reality a little bit more. So
Yeah, it's tough. It's with nowadays you're almost you're just bombarded with technology and things, and if you're not careful as a parent, your kids are seeing you on your phone. If you're not being intentional with your time with them, and they're curious and they want to just pick up the device, and
yeah,
it almost becomes a part of them. Like my kids on an iPad or on a console or something like that, it's just intuition to them. They
Yeah.
just
it's
yeah.
crazy how fast that they pick it
Yeah,
up and they
I
don't
still
even have to
struggle
think
with
about
it,
it.
yeah.
Like when there's something new
Yeah.
that we get, I have to really be intentful about trying to learn it. Where
Yeah. My
My-
grandma always jokes about how she's so computer illiterate, and I'd
Yeah.
have to go over and fix a simple problem. But my kids, maybe even your kids, are going to think the same about us.
yeah, and you realize it's just generationally
Yeah.
cyclical because
Yeah,
those things that you grow up with, you're exposed to earlier and you learn quicker. I'm sure there was things like that for us as far as the games or how you look at skateboarding or anything else. When
Mhm.
you had the generation of the 90s and early 2000s when, oh, skateboarding kids are evil. They're so bad. It's so awful. Oh, it's because it's something that people didn't understand, I
yeah,
think that's a tough thing is to really, find a balance between the progress and the regression of progress because sometimes there's too much of a good thing. So, or it can be a deficit. We got all this technology. but our kids going to be able to do this someday? You
Yeah,
know?
that's what I worry about is raw conversations. Everything's just over a screen nowadays, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I try to instill in my kids that having a face to face conversation is twice, if well, not even twice, way more valuable than
Yeah.
conversation over a screen. But also, with business and the way things have been going, having to expedite things and having a flow of information so much faster than setting up a person to person meeting. You can just do it digitally, and
Mhm.
there's values and benefits over it, but there's just nothing that can replace it
Yeah.
for certain things.
Yeah. I mean, you got people who don't think that it's safe even to meet somebody at a Starbucks line or
Yeah.
talk to them in a grocery store. If,
Yeah.
we grew up in that shift, like you said, where,
Mhm.
if we were asked, oh, how'd you meet so and so? And it was back in 2000 or 2005. It was, oh, well, I met them online or through MySpace or something like that. And
Mhm.
they're like, oh, how do you know they're not a murderer? Or
Yeah.
how do you know, they're not some criminal or they're trying to get at you? Where now it's almost the opposite. So if you tell somebody that you met somebody random as a stranger at the grocery store or
Mhm.
street, they're like, really? You just talk to somebody random
It's
that
almost
you
seen as
don't know? You
weird.
didn't snoop to them?
It's
It's just
like,
like,
yeah.
it's
You
so
introduce you to someone
backwards.
you talk to someone, it's almost like,
Yeah.
you're like, why are you talking to me? That's so sad.
It is. I think
Yeah.
it's led us as a society to have so many, because of all of our presuppositions, it's led us to have so many preconceived judgments against people
Mhm.
before even getting an opportunity to know them. Like we judge
Mhm.
of what their judgments are going to be
Mhm.
based upon what we decide to snoop and see, or
Yeah.
based upon what somebody looks like
Yeah.
on their profile or on the internet, or what they follow or what they do or what they post, instead of just getting to know your neighbor. Like,
I would say my wife, she'll try to compliment someone when we're out. Like
yeah,
she'll see someone and she'll try to compliment them on something about them, and
that's awesome.
it makes their day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
And they're surprised, they're caught off, like they're
Yeah.
taken back, like what?
It's sad but beautiful at the same
Yeah.
time of like how
Yeah.
impactful it is,
Yeah.
because you would think that just,
No.
oh, hey, you got a nice hat or something, man. Like
Mhm.
that wouldn't be like, what?
Yeah. Do you ever run into people? I know you don't live where you grew up, so it might not be as prevalent. But do you ever run into people you went to school with, or from past job or anything like that, and you both know that you recognize each other, but someone's got to say something, or you don't say anything at all?
Yeah.
And I'll do that. And I'm very open about going up and saying hi to them. And it's like,
Mhm.
hey, I remember you from here, or we went to school together. How are you doing? And if it wasn't for that approach, I know we would never speak to each other. It's awkward. And they like look the other way and just continue about their business. It's almost like they didn't even see you in the first place.
Yeah,
It's
but
like,
you still both know that something
yeah, but
was
I
underlying.
think
It's
it's,
like, yeah,
I mean, if you have a connection from the past and you see them, that's an opportunity to
explore it.
to
Yeah.
talk to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you get that from the military a lot too. I mean, it even
Mhm.
happens just on the recognition, to kind of tie what we started with, the recognition of last name basis or a
Mhm.
moniker basis. People see a last name or see that associated with what you do, and they're like, "Oh, Benedict. I knew some other Benedict from Fire or something like that." Like, are you this guy that I heard of? And you realize how few degrees of separations of relationship you actually are tied to so many people.
Yeah. Are there
There's
many Shimmins out there?
No, there's not. And I hear there's actually one here in the valley, and I've
Really?
never met any other one that's not my family.
His first name's Michael.
Yeah. So,
Probably not, but
yeah, you
you
can
never
snoop
know.
on that, even though we just talked about not doing it. But yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's funny though how many people that you come across that knew of you or knew you in some way, shape, or form, especially with the military. I think there's this old on Reddit back in the good old days. They used to call it the 6 degrees of bacon. That there's only 6 relationship steps that separate people away from knowing Kevin Bacon. Yeah, I don't know why or what the Reddit community chose that for, but when you actually
Interesting.
think about it, that you're only 6 relationship steps away
Huh.
from knowing almost everybody on the planet.
Kevin Bacon must be a thing or something, because we were watching a Marvel holiday special and it was all about kidnapping Kevin Bacon to
Really?
bring up to space for what's his
Yeah,
face.
it's got to
Yeah.
be like some cliche thing. Same with like Nick
But
Cage or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, we're all closer in relation than we think. We brothers and sisters, we need to be kinder to each other.
oh yeah, we are. And To your
Yeah.
point, I mean, when you know that you have those moments or those opportunities to be able to reach out to somebody,
Mhm.
it all makes us uncomfortable. I'd probably say, especially after COVID. We were talking a little bit before we started
Mhm.
the podcast that, it introduced a little bit of social anxiety to everybody to a degree. And to do that uncomfortable thing to get a positive result, especially when it can positively impact somebody else's life,
Mhm.
why
Yeah, and I
not?
think if you don't do it, you might like if you have the idea of regret or anything like that in your mind, yeah, you just got to break that habit and
Yeah,
get in the habit of putting yourself out of your comfort zone temporarily because you'll be glad you had that conversation.
definitely.
I think so. I was looking through my yearbook with my kid, and um, he wanted to see what I looked like in high
Yeah.
school, and I got a few chuckles out of that because of the skater hair and all that stuff.
You had skater hair? Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be interesting to see that. I've seen your old ID card from when you were like 19, but
Yeah, no, that
I
was
haven't
after
seen
the
your.
military, so I had to get clean shaven. But yeah, I had skater hair, and I was always like flicking my head, so I had
I'd pay to see
probably
that.
neck issues from that. But yeah, anyways, we were just looking through that and just realizing how many people I haven't talked to for such a long time that I used to talk to on a daily
Yeah.
basis, and so I'm curious what they're doing in life right now.
Makes you really value the few relationships that I don't know if you had
Mhm.
many relationships that you've maintained since that age.
It's
Um,
been difficult, I
it is.
think. Uh, the truth of life is people grow in different directions,
Mhm.
and just because we were friends in high school doesn't mean that we're going to be friends for life. There's two good friends that I can think of, and they were my best friends in high school.
Yeah.
No matter how much time we spend apart, when we get together, it's just like we
Just like not a
paused
day
and
has passed.
played.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just not that all
Yeah.
that time we just picked up from where we left off, and it's really cool because we don't get together very often, and we
Yeah.
always after hanging out, we're like we got to get together more often, and a year later, we're finally together again. So,
Yeah. Adult life gets in the way.
yeah.
I think it's because we let it get in the way too. You talk about being intentional. It's like hard to be intentional with your time, especially when your priority list changes for every single person. So
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I have. I've got the same two friends that I grew up with, Ben and Blake,
Mhm.
and we still talk and can pick up like
Yeah.
nothing happened. But I think that in men, especially, it seems like I'm really glad to have you as a friend,
Mhm.
especially me having moved up here because men crave that. Men grew up with that to a degree, or at least in our generation before the shift to complete technology. Like you see this yearning, this desire, this struggle to make not just a friend, but like a brotherhood to a degree of somebody who you wouldn't be mad at popping up at your house at random,
Yeah.
or who you'd be happy to go help them change a tire on the side of the freeway at 2 in the morning. It's that directness of relationship. When you grow up
Mhm.
with it and you have that and it's that deep, to
Mhm.
not have that, that's hard.
Yeah, this is a difficulty I face in life
Yeah.
is I grew up in a transactional environment.
Mhm.
So my grandparents helped raise me, and my parents were divorced and worked a lot, and it just felt like everything was transactional. Like I'll do this, so you got to do this, and to pay for childcare, quote unquote, I had to do hard labor at my grandparents, which I completely am thankful for because it gave me the work ethic that I have
Yeah.
today and the skills and abilities that I have today. But at the time, I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
It felt like slave labor.
Yeah. Palm and I are another guy that we work with. We were talking about something similar to
Yeah.
where we wouldn't wish that upon our kids that they'd gone through some of the difficulties or the struggles that we have. But we also wouldn't take away the fact, now knowing that we got through it when we were kids, and
Yeah.
that I'm sure you'd probably say the same, knowing that you got through it well as an adult and that you could find benefit even to the struggle or to the suffering, probably wouldn't choose to change it.
No, not at all. Made me strong.
Yeah.
And I plan on doing the same with my kids, but with the follow up.
Yeah.
I didn't have the follow up. I didn't have the reasoning. It was like because I said so. Because I'm doing this. That's why you have to do
Same.
this. It is no like I love you and I want you to grow and develop. It is important for you to learn how to do this because of this. So just hands-on skills, common sense skills.
Yeah.
My kids go to a school where they academically they are pushed, so they're
Mhm.
going to be very book smart, but they need to have the life skills along with it. So um, it's a lot easier to do something myself
Yeah.
and to get it done with versus teaching my kid how to do it along the way. it takes a lot more effort,
But
and
you
it can be
learn a lot
frustrating,
in
but
that
I am
too.
learning and they are learning. I'm
Yeah.
learning to be more patient,
Mhm.
and they are learning the skill. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I think that's
It's-
probably a thing for all
Yeah.
guys. Like,
Yes.
you know, we
Yes.
find the things that we're good at, and then we want to really we're problem solvers.
Yeah.
We want to make things efficient, more productive, better in the end. And then kids are definitely they hone you, whether you want to or not. I mean, you can choose not to, and you're going to have a horrible relationship with your kid in the future, especially when they're an adult and they look back on, oh man, my dad didn't want to teach me or include me or anything like that.
Mhm.
But if you really take the time and learn how to slow down and put more emphasis into the teaching of the them than the accomplishing or the fixing of the problem, that's an opportunity for us to learn more in something that we thought we already had mastered enough to fix the issue.
Mhm.
Now it's like fix the issue, but do it in this way. But you said something that I think is the crux of whether or not that happens with everybody, which is reasoning. Why?
Mhm.
You know,
The
that-
easy answer is to say because I said so, but I've heard you
that's no
talk on this
reasoning,
before
dude.
on the why, on the reasoning, on
Yeah.
because that is part of the learning process too. Because then you grow up to be an individual who either acts that way themselves towards people if they're in a leadership role, or they're almost spiteful. They're like, I don't want to do this until you give me a reason, and which you should have, but it's from a different perspective because you'll have employees that they have a good work ethic, they want to do better, they want to improve, they don't want to. It's not like what can this place do for me? They're like, okay, I'm here, I'm getting paid, I want to contribute, but you have to have a why and you have to have like value in something. Like, what are you working towards? So
Well,
it's
nobody
like,
can know the value
Yeah.
if they don't know the why.
yeah. And so when you grow up just being told because I sold so, that's the only reason why you think you're doing things.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's important. But yeah, you spoke on it before. You have a better
Yeah.
explanation than I do.
I don't know if it's better explanation so much. You know me, man. I just
Yeah.
sit there and I dwell on things to try and make myself better, or I dwell on the why.
Mhm.
I use, and it's not. It was not an organic thing that came to me. Being that way, it was something I learned through heartache, strife, life struggle, similar things that you went through. You and I have talked about childhood and being like we are now, being in a household that because I told you to, or because I'm your mom, or because I'm your dad, just do what you're told.
Mhm.
It doesn't teach anybody. But the thing that opened it up to me was it wasn't the learning, self learned lessons from the struggle. It was the struggle pushing me towards God and then opening my eyes to that. Okay. Surely I say unto you, you must make yourself like a child
Mm.
to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And then tells us to ask, seek, knock. Like, what do kids always do? That parents get driven nuts by. Why? Why? Why?
Their intentions are
Why?
not bad.
No, they're not, and that's the thing, right? It's just as
Yeah.
much as at work we've had these conversations, or
Yeah.
with kids, with people, anybody. It's the receiver of the why
Mhm.
that chooses whether or not that's a question to raise doubt, or a
Mhm.
question to raise disrespect, or a question to insinuate lack of belief or falsity. Like, I can be like, oh, really? Is that why it happened? And that's probably going to make you think, asking it in that way, probably going to make you think that I'm trying to insinuate or instill doubt in you, or that I
Mhm.
don't believe you.
Yeah.
But even if that's the case, you could still sit there and be like, no. You could, as the receiver of that why question, you can eliminate all of that negativity and choose to perceive it, or just give it in that way. The why I think, is a beautiful thing to help us not lean on our own understanding and find a point with which we agree, or can at least step off with a mutual understanding to work symbiotically, that people are scared of. And I think it's because a lot of the time people are scared of the why of themselves. They don't know
Mhm.
why they do what they do. They don't know why they are who they say they are. Or if I were to ask you, Benny, can you tell me, who are you? Who's Paul Benedict?
Yeah, that's a long answer. But I can give the long answer, I can give a short answer. I mean, I'm still figuring it out, but
But if you had to
it
shoot off
makes
the
me,
dome,
yeah.
like what would you say? Like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm Mike. You're Paul. Yeah. Who are you?
You know what people go to first is their
Their
occupation.
job.
Their occupation. Yeah, exactly.
Like, and then
Like I think I'm a firefighter.
Yeah. And I still have the
Yeah.
proclivity to want to go to that because it's comfortable. It's
Mhm.
easy. I'm put on the spot. I want to
Yeah.
go to something that I can refer to. But
You know what my pastor said?
what?
Tell people you're a child of God.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
now morphed it to where the very first thing, like if you were to, I even thought about it before here. I didn't know how you're going to open this up, and it was like, okay,
Yeah.
you asked me, well, tell me about yourself. Tell me who you are. It'd be
Yep.
a little bit awkward on camera at first, but then
Mhm.
I was like, no, who I am is a Christian
Yeah.
first and foremost. Imperfect, struggling, never going to be perfect. As far as I'm concerned, there's only ever been one Christian that followed it out to the letter, to the T.
Mhm.
We're all disciples, right? We're all aspiring to be that, but I'm a Christian, I'm a husband, and I'm a father first. And then I'm a firefighter. It's just what I do.
Yeah.
I struggled to answer your opening with the whole, where did Doc come from? Because
Mhm.
that almost feels like a separate lifetime ago.
Yeah.
And like I was, as much as, yeah, I did something responsible or whatnot, and I was responsible for like 170 guys, my mindset then was childlike. I identified myself as that instead of taking myself and applying it to that, if that makes sense. You know, so I almost didn't know how to answer at first. I was like, yeah, that's something of, that's a moniker that I hang on to out of pride. But it's not who I am. Who I am garnered that. It wasn't that garnered me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
So who
for
would you
sure.
say? Like who is Paul Benedict?
Yeah.
What would your lead still be, firefighter?
Well, before hearing some things, yeah, I mean, years past, yeah, always I was go straight to my occupation because I take a
Yeah.
lot, you know, of pride and ownership in being a firefighter. But,
Mhm.
you know, is that what matters the most? Is
Yeah.
that who I really am? You know, that's just something I do. I spend a lot of time doing. But you know, I'm a father. I'm a husband. Or like I said, I'm a child of God, and
Yeah.
I'm trying to be a better person. I think that's more important than what I do for a living. It feeds my family and it grows my knowledge and experience.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of me, but it's not who I am solely.
Yeah.
If I wasn't a firefighter today, I could still be here. I could still be all those things.
Yeah. You say it's more like an avenue to express who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, I have a lot of other things that I can say about that. You know, I grew up an artist, a musician.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's a lot of things that are part of me, but it's like, what am I doing currently? The people just go to that, what they're currently doing in their
Yeah.
profession. So,
I was like, what do you want written on your headstone?
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Like you sit there and
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever walk through a
Mhm.
cemetery and you see that where it's like, oh, here lies so and so, beloved.
Kill them with kindness.
What? Like,
That's something that I try to live by.
Yeah.
Kill them with kindness. It's hard to have hate towards someone who is kind, but it's hard to be kind at all times too. It's very hard.
it is, but and I
We're
think
supposed to be.
it's that mantra
Mhm.
is very much so in line with what Christ said above all this. You're to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind,
Mhm.
and to love your neighbor as yourself. Like, would you ever willfully, knowingly choose to kill yourself and hate yourself?
Mm.
Probably not. Most people wouldn't. Yeah, people have self-destructive tendencies that they don't recognize, but you would actually be like, nope, I could push a button to hate myself and kill myself. You wouldn't. But there's plenty of us that have done that out of hurt,
Mhm.
perpetuating a cycle of hurt because we were hurt and then giving that on to somebody else, or of pain or from misunderstanding.
Yeah.
So to kill them with kindness, that really is loving your neighbor as yourself,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. I think with, you know, killing yourself, like you mentioned, is you have to be able to forgive yourself. These people who can't forgive themselves, like they just they weren't around the right people, they were
Yeah.
in the wrong atmosphere, and they weren't found in time. You know, they're just is a tragedy. It was like we had a huge conversation, my wife and I, about, you know, being able to forgive ourselves. Like we were forgiven, we are forgiven at any point. No one is too far gone. No one is too far lost that can't be saved, that chooses to. Like, I never argue with a fool. There's difference between if
Yeah,
someone
don't
who,
cast pearls in front of swine, right? Like,
they're,
it's hard.
you can take someone who they have a chance, like
Yeah.
they are open to forgiveness and change, but if they are turning their back time after time after time again, it's just not their time.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's willingness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you
We have free will.
can't help somebody who doesn't want to help themselves,
Mhm.
and it's not necessarily that's
No.
us helping them, but it's us giving them the tools.
But people who choose to end it
Yeah.
because they can't forgive themselves, they have this weight on their shoulders. You
So sad.
give it to God. Give your weight, your shoulders to God. Give your faith to God. It will
Yeah.
it will lessen the load.
And I think everybody would be lying through their teeth if they said that they hadn't been in that moment. If they haven't ever been
Mhm.
in their life at such a lowest of a low that they wanted to
Yeah.
end it all. They wanted to push that button to
Mhm.
hurt, hate, kill themselves if they wanted to,
Yeah.
or if they felt like it. But
Mhm.
no, you're absolutely right. There's nothing that you can't be forgiven for without asking, repenting. Like, crying out loud, when Christ was crucified, there was a thief and a murderer to his left and right.
Yeah. And I think the hardest part for people is making that first step towards forgiveness, because like you've done, like someone, they may think they've done so much in
Yeah.
their life, so much evil, so much bad. Like nobody can forgive me for this. Like this is, and they're just carrying that with them. But until you go through that process of acknowledging it and crying out and asking for forgiveness and working through those issues, it's just going to continue down that downward spiral.
Yeah. Well, that's where that self-destructive aspect comes in. We're made in his image. We want justice, and sometimes it's justice against ourselves. We know
Yeah.
when we've done.
Mhm.
We know when we could have done better. And there's sometimes that self-destructive aspect to where, nope, I'm not going to accept forgiveness because I don't feel worthy.
Mhm.
We're not the ones that choose whether we're worthy or not. We have to accept it. And then that's almost how I believe that's how the hurt cycle continues to perpetuate, because you can't give what you don't have. First, you have to accept the love and the forgiveness
Mhm.
to be able to give it to somebody else. If you don't accept it, how can you give it? And after you have it, it's almost equally as hard to give it, because when you know you've been wronged by somebody, when you know that you're within the eye for an eye, for retribution or for justice,
Mhm.
you have a choice whether to seek out that eye. And I think I don't think I know, that's the wonderful thing about Christ, is he referred to the old law of an eye for an eye. And he said, well, an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind.
Mhm.
So what are we going to do? The best way to really show that love and to give that forgiveness is to, when somebody's wronged you or hurt you,
Yeah.
do what Christ did.
I
Take
I
it on.
can
Let it go.
I can forgive somebody for something that they've done to me. It doesn't mean that trust isn't broken or trust isn't lost in that process. There's still,
Yeah.
just because you forgive someone doesn't mean that it's a clean slate and we can continue a relationship where it left off. There has to be a building of trust again. And that's the hard part, because rebuilding trust takes a lot of effort.
Oh, yeah.
So forgiving someone and having peace of mind in your heart that you aren't judging them
Yeah.
for what they did to you, because we shouldn't be doing that. We're emotional human beings. Like, we're going to have that process
Yeah.
of anger,
Yeah.
resentment, hopefully forgiveness, and then peace. But, after all that, if that person, are they going to have your trust? Are they going to be able to be trusted? Just because you forgive someone doesn't mean you can.
Doesn't mean you forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the hard part about life is losing people in your life due to a lack of trust, or having to just cut them loose because they're
And-
bad for you, and they're bad for your journey towards, where you're trying to end up. So,
Yeah.
but you can forgive them and you can pray for them.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right.
But I don't know, do you think if you forgive someone, do you have to tell them that you forgive them, or do you feel it in your heart, or is that only halfway?
I would say it's a
I'll say this because I have had relationships that have broken and
yeah.
that I have like in my heart, I think I've forgiven them, but I've never really expressed it to them or and there's been both wrong. There's been wrongs on both sides. So maybe like, having that apology, having that conversation, like I forgive you, but like, we won't see each other again intentionally.
Well, it's a and that it's a layered situation though.
Mhm.
I think I would almost be more inclined to say that forgiveness is, as much as it seems like it's for somebody else, it's almost it's almost selfish. Because when you don't forgive,
Mhm.
you're hanging on to bitterness that grows into resentment, and then that resentment only ends up hurting who?
Mhm.
You. It
Exactly.
doesn't do anything for the other person. But I would say that
Yeah.
um, if you forgive, there's times with which you might not tell that person because, again, it's casting pearls before swine. You can forgive somebody who doesn't want forgiveness.
Mhm.
Forgiveness doesn't have to be a two-way street. But if you know that that person is impacted, self-destructive, like we were talking about, seeking self-retribution almost, or taking it out on themselves, or they feel guilt because whatever it might be their pride that stops them from asking you to forgive them, or it might be fear of being humiliated, or it might be fear of being rejected because they've done that with somebody before. You don't know how their life was. You know that if you know that telling them that you have that inclination, just say pray about it.
Mhm.
You have that inclination that saying, "Hey, I forgive you," would do them benefit, even if whether they've directly asked you to be forgiven. Like,
Yeah.
give it. Why withhold the good?
It's difficult
But
because yeah, I think what you'd mentioned, two ways. If you go to someone and tell them that you forgive them, one, their pride and ego takes over. It's like, oh, wait, well, you're
Mhm.
forgiving me for this, like
Yeah,
you did this, this, and this, or I don't need to be forgiven, or it's like, oh, it's really to that point, or they take it as, oh, you were giving me grace, and like it's such a good thing because they know they did wrong,
yeah,
and you're still forgiving them. But for me, there's been people that I've chosen not to voice that to because almost for like my family's safety or with the situation that happened in the past, like it was we're not going to see each other again
mhm,
because there was it was a big deal with my wife's safety or my own
yeah.
safety, and if I approach that situation again, I'm worried I'll be entangled in it again, so I just have to let go. But I in my heart, yeah, I would want to forgive
Yeah.
and let them know that there's nothing they can't be forgiven for, but they just can't repeat that behavior, and that's what I'm worried about. Someone taking a forgiveness and be like, okay, let's do it again.
Which
It's
we've
tough.
probably all been in that place too, where we've been hurt with the same
Hmm.
thing.
Hmm.
I mean, it happens in
People who are nice can be
family.
taken advantage of
Yeah.
in the flesh, like in the human world, because yeah, it's we're vulnerable.
That's the only thing that gets the beauty and wonder of relationship is
Hmm.
vulnerability.
Hmm.
Sad part is that you get taken advantage of and it makes you want to be less vulnerable. You get gun shy.
Yeah,
That then
hardened heart.
yeah, it prevents you
Hmm.
from spreading and receiving that love. You can't take into a hardened heart a reception of love to be able to have that love to then give back by
Yeah.
being hardened, but it's also that's that's the tough thing. We talk about a lot, and you hear us and the guys at work, or Juan talk about how Shimmin's so black and white, Shimmin's so black and white. With things, with processes, with structure, yes, it's black and white. And I also
Mm.
have a worldview and ideology that I can rely upon that is very black and white. But Christ's sacrifice was gray. I don't mean that by like it can be interpreted as gray. I mean, no, it was we as humans are gray.
Mm.
The law, the what's right and wrong can still be what's right and wrong while we are fallible, imperfect at carrying it out, therefore we are gray. So to not give that opportunity of grace, that's how Christ loved, right? Love is truth, not denying the truth. not denying reality, no matter how inconvenient, but then still giving grace. Like, we are all deserving of condemnation, of the judgment. We're born, practiced in a fallen, sinful world, but that, and there was one who was blameless, one who didn't do any of that. You know, that's that judge who sat there and said, okay, here's your sentence for all your wrongdoing. And then Christ was the one that walked in his side and said, I'll pay his fine. I'll serve his time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's the grace aspect. And I would probably say that's the hardest thing for me as a man to do. I don't know about for you. I'd ask you the same. We naturally want to seek justice, or want to seek a this plus this equals this for our problem solving, like, mind type.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you and how do you choose to interject the grace when you feel like it should be justice instead?
Yeah, my views have changed over time. Um, I feel like generally I am a pretty graceful person,
Yeah.
and I do feel like I have been taken advantage of because of that. But
Mhm.
I
Same.
try to remain that way because I have an understanding of, like, thinking of it from their perspective,
Yeah.
and in itself they need grace for that. So I try not to jump to conclusions, and I try not to be judgeful, because I think human nature, like, we have a problem of trying to judge. And when it comes to grace, judging is the opposite of grace.
No,
And we're
absolutely.
not meant to be judgeful people, and we're not the ultimate say. We're all sinners in our own way. There's so many things that we do wrong. Everyone has their sin, and we just have to work towards it. When I judge someone, or I don't have grace, I'm just a fool at that point, because there's something that could be pointed right back at me.
Yeah.
So now there are things that seem more heinous than others,
Hmm.
and that's hard. When I think about, I think the most heinous, with things that relate to the death penalty. So things that someone has done for the
Hmm.
death penalty, it's tough.
Well, I'm bounced around even stuff with like the
Hmm.
death penalty or
Hmm.
abortion and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I haven't bounced around with abortion, but I mean, like, bounced that around in my mind, the concepts of it.
Yeah. Just thinking
But
through different sides, and
yeah, because like, there's often times in with which a person accepts God that they go from the, oh, they recognize, they know something there to be, they accept him, and then it's, oh, this walk. And
Mhm.
at first it's, okay, a feeling that I have to do or be this legalistic way or manner to accept and still maintain that gift or that love, or that ability to be forgiven and to be continually loved when
Mhm.
it's not by works, right? It's by faith and grace. But it's tough because I used to think that I've gone from the whole, okay, I know the rules and I study and I do the devotions and I find the things out that I should not do and I ought not do. And then it's, oh, now I'm going to be legalistic and judge myself and others based on that.
Mhm.
But I think the difference is, it's not that we're not supposed to judge, it's the passing of judgment or condemnation.
Mhm.
And whether or not that judgment is coming from our understanding, because we're not supposed to lean on our understanding.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that's the constant struggle not to do.
And
Yeah.
it proves itself time and time again, because
Yeah.
look how much we've changed in just the last 10 years since, we were into our adulthood.
Yeah.
My views are so different.
Look how much you and I have changed in the 3 years that we've
So
known
it's
each
like
other.
we can't lean our own understanding. We only know what we know at the time. We were
Yeah.
constantly learning. But yeah, if you direct your seeking of knowledge, and you put yourself into faith, and trying to just be the best person that you can,
Yeah.
set your ego at the door. We live in such a world where there's so much information to absorb.
Mm-hmm.
Pick something you're interested in. You can master it if you want to.
Yeah.
You can dabble in things if you want to.
It's so much easier to be able to
Yeah.
become a master.
It's just, there's a difference between taking that information and thinking you're so high, mighty, powerful, versus using it for good, or just as a
Yeah.
hobby, being interested. We're here to enjoy life as much as we can when we can, but we can't focus on that solely. We have things to do here. We have
And
a
we have to
place
spread
to
that joy
end
and that
up,
love.
and it's a balance. I have been guilty of being greedy. I have been guilty of being selfish and just pursuing my endeavors when I open my eyes and realize that there's more to it than that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
that was such a young man's perspective that I had, being influenced by things that I've seen. I'm
Mhm.
just starting to realize it now. Kids, I think, have been a huge impact on me. My wife has been a huge impact on me.
Do you forgive yourself though?
I do.
Like when you think about because we've all been in a
Mhm.
place or been in a manner with which, or been expressing things in a manner with which was not
Mhm.
kind or loving or beneficial to others, or that we knew down in
Mhm.
our core, whether we wanted to acknowledge it or not on the surface,
Mhm.
that it was wrong because we'd done it out of pleasure or not. Which do you think you
Mhm.
lean more to one side than the other, or do you think you found the center or the balance of I'm gonna let it go completely and
Mhm.
just forgive it and not think about it, or is it the I'm gonna seek self destruction because I should pay for my wrongdoings, or do you think that
No,
or do you think it's an ebb and flow for you?
I think I'm in a phase right now where I'm like, a door is opened
Yeah,
and I am running down that hallway as fast as I can towards some sort of light that has given me a new spark. Because I felt stuck
feels good, huh?
recently, and it feels good. And it feels good that I'm doing it alongside my wife and my family.
Well, I think more importantly too is not just it feels good, but
Hmm.
at the end of the day, like back when we were younger and we did more foolish things, yeah, we did what felt good.
Yeah,
But then when you were
very
alone with
impulsive.
you,
Hmm.
you knew it not to be good. So yeah,
Yeah,
it feels good now, but
hmm
not only does it feel good,
yeah.
hopefully you know it to be good.
Lots
You
of ups
can
and downs.
rely on
Yeah,
that.
hmm
But it's hard.
yeah,
It's so hard.
yeah. It was like when you were growing up as a kid. Because are you the middle son?
No, I'm the
You're the
youngest
youngest.
of four.
You're the youngest son.
Yeah.
Did you like who introduced God and faith to you? Was it your father? Was it both of your parents?
I would say when my mom was was one of her highs during my childhood,
Yeah.
and it was I realize now as an adult it was because it was her high.
Mm,
It was um, the joy that God put into her life and her bringing us to church, and then me speaking with other people. And that's what led that for me. But I also didn't have that was the introduction, but that wasn't the understanding of the reason. Because when you go to church as a kid or you see at Sunday school, I
mhm,
often say, you know, they tell you what to think. They don't teach you why.
mhm,
But God says, ask, seek, knock. Go
mhm.
on your knowing. We're supposed to think and learn why. Um, I was introduced to my faith my mom, because of my mom and her doing better on one of the highs during childhood. But my true what minimal understanding I have now is going through Grand Canyon Christian University. So honestly, it was trying to challenge my faith or
Yeah.
trying to challenge what I claimed
That
to
was
believe.
yeah, that was kind of the next question was, anyway, people can be introduced at a young age.
Yeah.
Like for example, I was, but I never had consistency and I never had conviction, and I wouldn't call it faith. It was just we're going to church. My dad drove me to
Yeah.
church, and
Awareness.
I'm almost like sitting there like,
Yeah.
what is the purpose of this? What
Yeah.
and getting distracted.
Yeah.
Playing with my Hot Wheels car that I snuck in my pocket while the pastor is speaking, and not even knowing a single thing he said when I walked out of there.
Well, and I think part of that too is
Yeah,
just that's childhood though too.
yeah.
Like
But my dad didn't
I've
put
fallen
me.
asleep in church
My
as a
dad
kid
didn't
so
put
much
me.
as a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah.
Like
I
waking
enjoyed
up to the
singing.
last music, like this, like oh, we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the worship. I
Yeah.
used to love, I would just belt out the songs. I would try to sound as loud and good as I could because
Yeah.
I just like, I wanted to harmonize with the people singing up front. Like, that
Mhm.
was such a joyful thing. And now I'm like, I have a hard time
You join the
worshiping.
choir.
I have a hard time. My wife joined the choir.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's her thing. I don't want to take that from her.
Yeah. Well, could be
Yeah.
choirs. It's not any
Yeah.
one person. Like if she wanted to do firefighting and she had the
Yeah.
aptitude and the ability, and your
Yeah.
guys,
That might be too
you'd probably
soon.
be.
Well, maybe.
Well, you probably. There's a lot of people. I know I face it at time, but I assume that you're going to allude to like. And correct me if I'm wrong. Now it's almost hard not to think about how you're going to be looked at when you're worshiping,
Yeah. I don't know. It's
or
so
if you have that
different.
confidence to
Yeah.
be.
I want both because as a kid, I loved worshiping,
Yeah.
and then I didn't understand the message. Now I understand the message, but I have a hard time worshiping. And I was like, I want both. So it's a work in progress. And my
Yeah.
wife, she does it, and it's like a superpower.
Yeah.
She's just so, I mean, when she worships. Beautiful to see.
Yeah.
So she's rubbing off on me.
That's awesome.
But what I was getting at is my dad didn't put me in Bible study for kids. Like we didn't go to the kids group. We sat
Yeah.
with him in the main hall when I was
Yeah.
from the age I can remember up till we stopped going to church around 12 or 13. And then, yeah, from 13 to 22, 23,
Mhm.
godless. I
Yeah.
remember having, like, I still had, so my dad, the one thing he did instill in me is prayer.
Yeah.
But we never prayed out loud.
Yeah.
It was always prayer to yourself. It was like an inner monologue almost. It was like, but I felt a presence and I felt like I was talking to someone. But was
Yeah.
I just offloading things? Did I have a relationship? I don't think I did. I don't think I had a relationship until recently. Because I got baptized again in 2019.
Congrats, man.
2019 is
That's awesome.
when I got baptized, is because I truly felt like I had that relationship.
Yeah.
And we were going consistently and we were talking about it. We were involving it in our daily life. Like it was the right time.
Mm-hmm.
And then life happened and I fell off the wagon a little bit. And now I'm trying to get back on. It's just a constant struggle, but it's there more than ever before.
Yeah.
So
What's a daily choice?
it is. And I just think about how I grew up as a kid, like understanding so little about it, but being told that this is the way. And versus now with my kids, we're giving them that understanding of the why, and we're living it daily. We're not just saying it that we're Christian and
Yeah.
that God, Jesus died on the cross for our sins. We're teaching them the stories that they need to know. We're reading the scripture. We're living our life as best as we can.
Yeah.
Kids have their good days and their bad days. So do parents.
Yeah.
So when we're all in tune and all in sync, it's such a beautiful thing when we can get together and do it. Like it's just
Yeah.
overwhelmingly good. We're trying to make those days happen more often.
Takes a lot of humility
Yeah.
as a parent,
Yeah.
though, to like
Yeah.
recognize to have to do it, to
Mhm.
implement it, and then
Mhm.
no, I won't say that when you have an interaction with somebody and something goes negative, because we know as parents we're not going to respond the best that we should or according to God every time.
Mhm.
We're fallible. We're human. We're emotional. There might be something that we see that put them in danger and they don't recognize that. So that gets us right to the high tone real quick, snappy, and they're just caught off guard. And then it's okay, wait a minute. They don't have an understanding of that why. So then we got to be humble enough to be like, okay, even though we have our level of understanding and maturity, we need to sit there and, hey, Dad wasn't right in this. Or for Mom, be like, Mom could have done this or been this way with you better. But it's a maturity thing of the
Mhm.
kid too. But
Were your friends growing up as a kid faithful? Like, did you have similar kids around you growing up, or were you the kid that was bringing that to the group?
I would say that of myself, Blake, and Ben, the trio that hung out a
Yeah.
ton. And when I say a ton, there would be 4 or 5 nights that we'd stay at each other's house in a
Nice.
row. Like
Yeah.
I were closer to them than
Mhm.
to my immediate family.
Yeah.
For most of my childhood. But I would say that we were pretty equivalent in that.
Mhm.
All of our parents were involved in church,
Mhm.
but we received and this is something I kind of wanted to touch on before. As kids, we received the factory, same way that school is set up for kids right now, the industrial model of religiosity, of
Mhm.
religion, of Sunday school, of Sunday, Wednesday. This is what you
Mhm.
do this, you do this. This is what we want the result of. Just like industrialization led to the school model that we have now to get factory workers to do what corporate America wanted them to do,
Mhm.
not to think and to know why. So I'd say, no, I wasn't the standout, but I
Mhm.
had there were certain things that each of us understood a little bit more than the other if we cared to, if we had the interest. But
Mhm. And I think as kids,
Nah.
there is not necessarily, that's probably not a subject being talked about too much anyways, because we're kids.
Yeah.
So like, I don't even remember that too much either. I remember having the one friend who was Jehovah's Witness growing up, and it was it wasn't the good that we would hear; it was the bad that we'd hear. They're like, we didn't celebrate holidays, so we felt guilty when we were talking about the holidays at recess.
Mhm.
Didn't celebrate birthdays.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I kind of grew up having some influence with like the bad sides of certain religions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it wasn't until yeah adulthood that you have conversations with other adults about this stuff.
Yeah.
It's like a whole new experience. It's like, wow,
It is. It's a lot. And you
Yeah.
realize you got to like cycle through a lot of the childhood and
Yeah.
reprocess it to see. 'Cause,
Yeah.
you look through things as an eye or through the
Mhm.
mind of a child when you're a kid. But I'd say there
Mhm.
were things that I knew. And I think we all know to a degree. It's just whether you actually give into it.
Mhm.
You know when you were a kid and you were doing something wrong, and there was that little thing inside you, or what was
Mhm.
written. God says it's written upon all of us. That
Mhm.
morality, because justify morality to me without using God, it's not
Oh,
possible. Without a
yeah.
creator, you can't justify morality to a degree. Which is why no, theological debate. They
Yeah.
of atheist versus Christian apologist, they hate that topic of morality is because the morality is the one that just you can't get without God. But when you're a kid, you have a sense of morality that doesn't come from just your parents that, you didn't do this thing with your parents. Your parents didn't teach you. Parents didn't tell you it was okay, but it's wrong. I would say
Yeah.
I was that kid that would more pull away from things that sometimes my friends wanted to do because it just felt, I don't know how else to explain it, but it
Mhm.
just felt wrong. I knew it in my core to be wrong. So,
Yeah.
and it led to where some of those, even with Ben and Blake,
Mhm.
the relationship fell off for a time or two.
Yeah.
Um, but I wouldn't say that I introduced that by any stretch. Like, we're
Oh.
all just in process. Perfect. I mean, you've seen
Mhm.
The Shack, right? Did we watch it up at the cabin that one time?
I think it was with you that we watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember the garden scene where Mac goes into the garden with Holy Spirit and wisdom, and he's looking at it, he's like, this place is a mess. And then they
Mhm.
show it from a top down view, and it's just spirals upon spirals. And it looks beautiful from that perspective, from God's perspective, per
Yeah.
se. But, and the Holy Spirit's just like, you're all perfectly in process.
Mhm.
To think that you're at a point to where you stop, it's a daily decision. I think it starts as childhood. You're learning. It's hard to find that point with which, okay, are we doing what we're told or do we know why we're doing what we're doing?
Mhm.
Like, you have kids that are in Sunday school right now.
Yes.
Do you talk to them after Sunday school and be like, okay, what did you learn and why did you learn that was good or not good?
Yeah. Sometimes they
Why do
don't
you
have
think
much
that
to
was
say. They're
beneficial?
almost like they either, I don't know. It's two things. They were either they learned something that really hit them, or
Yeah,
they were like, well, they have a level of understanding that just kind of put them in shock, or
yeah.
they weren't paying attention and they don't know what to talk about.
Hmm.
So, but yes, we do have the conversations with them, and we try to pick some stuff out that they
Yeah,
took away from it, and they're at the age where it's still pretty elementary,
yeah,
literally elementary. So they're doing art projects and
yeah.
stuff like that, and but I think one the other day was a Tower of Babylon, so they did an art
Mm,
project with that, and trying to stack marshmallows or something like that, and also trying to receive the message
yeah,
along with that. But yeah, as they get older, we'll be able to have more conversations and just try to make sure that they're taking something good from it and keeping their level of curiosity and intrigue up, because I don't want them to be the kids that feel like they're forced to be in this. I want them to have that
yeah,
relationship willingly. So that was the struggle I dealt with as a kid.
yeah.
I didn't feel like it was really a relationship. It was just we're here because we're here.
It's kind of checking a box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just trying to have that genuine relationship. But
Genuine.
yeah.
My, I love that word. My last church, I'd still call it my home church, Freedom, and as Pastor Ross would say, in Altus, Oklahoma, America, small little town in southwest Oklahoma. The sign hasn't changed on that church, I don't think, in 7 or 8 years now.
Hmm.
It was a church that had decreasing attendance, not good community involvement, and through servant leadership um, by someone listening to God, there's a sign that's out there and it hasn't changed. It says current and genuine.
Hmm.
It's like we as humans, I mean, that gives us it's almost like the parallels between, okay, love is truth with grace, right? Genuine, you can't have truth without, genuine, with being genuine. You can't have genuineness without truth. Like if you're being dishonest with me, you're being disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, the current is almost
Genuinely
a grace.
dishonest is not.
Yeah,
a
it's
thing?
being like, yeah, exactly right. Well, like
I feel like people are good at that.
there's some people
Some people
that,
are good at that.
it's manipulation.
Yeah.
If that's what it is. That's using people and loving things, not loving people and using things. But
Yeah.
the current with the parallel, the current is almost like that's the grace.
Mhm.
Because you've seen, how many times have you seen or heard of like churches going down or failing or not being involved in their community because it's just going to this pew, line up at this time, nobody talk to anybody, open up this hymnal. You look back at churches in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and
Mhm.
you get also a elderly generation that because they were used to the familiarity or the process,
Mhm.
that now it's not an open, inviting place to the next generation. Or it's almost like how we talked about earlier that we're going to have things that we don't understand of our kids because of the technology.
Mhm.
Are we going to push away our kids because of our lack of familiarity and understanding? Be like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. Back in my day, blah, blah, blah. Well, or are we going to be current and genuine to bridge the gap?
Mhm.
It's that genuineness is huge. It's so huge. How do we get that with kids now? How do you get kids to genuinely understand the love that's there for them? At what age? Do you think it's a maturity thing specifically? Do you think it's an age thing? Do you think that? What's the difference between a kid who hasn't heard about God and they're 8 years old and a person who hasn't heard about God and they're 35 years old?
Mhm.
Should they be learning the same things at the same time?
Yeah.
Should it even be that model, or should it be a?
Well, it's interesting because there's a few things, but
Yeah, I know.
take a man who
Yeah.
is a good person. Take a man who's a good person. He
Yeah.
lives by himself in a forest, and he doesn't know about God, but he does good things. And he has a small village, and he's not alone. But I'm trying to make up a story or analogy or something.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand here
Make
because
it
I thought
parallel.
maybe you would know because I thought about this the other day. Like, so you take a man who is the one living the good life, doing
Yeah.
good things for the village. He's providing, but they don't have God. They don't have religion. They don't really have much culture. It's pretty straightforward, but he sits down at night and he stares up into the sky
Oh.
and he's just looking at the
Yes.
vast beauty of everything.
Yup.
And he knows there's something greater than him, but he doesn't know God. Is he saved? Like,
Yeah. Yes. It's funny because I just stumbled upon this yesterday. I think it was, I don't know if you know who Cliff Nettle is. He goes to, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He goes to universities and he's got this platform called Ask Cliff. It's him and his son, Stuart, I
Cliff,
think.
yes. Yep.
Yeah, and they talk about God and they
Mhm.
get kids thinking about the
Mhm.
whys, the how. So they have
Yeah.
training, not told what to think, but they're doing the thinking. And almost I'll actually follow the train back.
Mhm.
He was on a podcast with George, and I think Stuart is his son's name, was on a podcast. George Janko,
George Janko, yeah.
I think. And George Janko used to be really close friends with somebody who's very verbose about their immorality and rejoices in immorality and has put it out there for the world of Logan Paul.
Yep.
Right?
Yep,
Who's earned money from
Mhm.
being what he knows is immoral and disingenuous, right?
Mhm.
And they were once, George and Logan were really good friends. George got his own podcast now. And still George is genuine to himself when he is with Logan, doesn't cast him out or burn the bridge, kind of like how we talked about earlier, because then how do you give that love of God to somebody?
Mhm.
How are you that disciple that spreads God's love? You burn. I don't think we can ever truly 100% burn. I don't think we're called to do that. But so George and Cliff were on there, and George was like, okay. He's like, so what about the people before Christ came?
Mm.
What about the man? And the way that you described it, the
Mhm.
man who is living a good life, doing right things, doing right, but he's the only one,
Mhm.
let's say, in his village. That was Jonah.
Jonah.
That was Noah,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Jonah was told, and even then he tried to run from God. That conviction, kind of like how when we're
Mhm.
like, oh, I know I want to get up here right now and put my hands in the air and praise the Lord at the top of my lungs, but I'm
Mhm.
almost worried to a degree about how I might look, or, oh, I want to
Yeah.
tell this person at work, but I'm worried about losing my job. At what order do we put God as precedence? Jonah did that too. He tried to run and hide. You know,
Mhm.
Noah was the only one. Christ hadn't been there yet.
No.
So I ask you, what are they? Are they saved?
Yeah.
All they could do is look up
Yeah. When I
and know
think,
upon the
yeah,
wonder of God.
all the events before that,
All the people before Christ
yeah.
is what kind of like you're painting.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Do they?
I think, I'm still getting into the scripture and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
to my understanding is, yeah, until God sent Christ down as himself in the human flesh, he was able to for the rest of eternity create that process for us to be saved and go to him in a different way than we were previously.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
because before it was just, and that's why I say when you asked me earlier, well, when did you get that
Yeah.
your relationship with God? I didn't get
Mhm.
it until I had the understanding that I
Yeah.
was supposed to have to a degree, and that was from GCU,
Mhm.
from having to learn the covenants. I didn't even know what like covenant actually meant. It's like
Mhm.
promise, contract, our agreement between
Yeah.
God's creation and God. I didn't know that there were 6 or 7 covenants, and that the one with Christ is the final. That's the New Testament, the new covenant, the last one to be, because we didn't hold our end of the bargain up on any of the rest of them, and that great that's the grace,
Mhm.
right? That's the undeserving, or deserving rather, of all the penalty in the world. But the guy who walks up and gives the fine to the judge, or is like, I'll serve a sentence for him.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's heavy.
Yeah. Because I think there's a lot of people in this world that just don't know God.
Yeah, it's been weighing on me a lot.
Mhm.
Um, you ask we ask about how we would describe ourselves. The first thing that I
Mhm.
recall ever telling my mom that I wanted to be when I was like 4 years old was, I wanted to be a preacher.
Mhm.
I didn't know why.
Oh,
I used
so
to dress like the
mhm.
pastor, the preacher, and like you said, this was during that high time of
Yeah.
life with my family and parents, where we were going to church, and I was at least receiving the right things as my parents were on their introduction to God. Um, I was just like, oh no, here's this guy that everybody is nice to, and he's nice to everybody. I want to be him.
Mhm.
You know, their fruits, or his fruits were evident and shown that. So, but now as an adult, it's almost something that I would be fearful of, almost like being a cop or
Mm.
being a firefighter to a degree. There's a certain thing of, what if you make a mistake? Because we're still human. What if you say something wrong?
Yeah, the level of responsibility that they have is overwhelming for sure.
It's huge.
Um,
But there's no greater thing that somebody can do
yeah,
than to spread the love. Like,
it comes down to the man in cloth is still judged as well. Like you were they're as much of a sinner as we are, and we have to have that grace and forgiveness and understanding
yeah,
that they're living the same life we are. They're just they're a vessel
yeah.
of God through him into to the human world, and we can be that way too. We can help him
Or we're called
in
to
all that we
be.
can. That's one thing that I've been trying to intentionally do more often is find ways, and it's not even necessarily finding ways. It's been coming easier and more intuitively, not from a standpoint of like anxiety or
Yeah.
fear, but just finding ways to bring that into conversations with people
Hmm.
and just you don't. I think they say it's you don't have to grow the plant, but you can plant the seed. You can
Yeah.
plant seeds into people, and you don't know when they'll sprout. They may. You don't know the impact you have on someone if you can.
Yeah. And who
If
knows if you planted a seed and I'm
Mhm.
supposed to be the one to water it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
because I'm so worried about
Yeah.
looking a
Mhm.
certain way or
Mhm.
saying the wrong thing, I don't.
Mhm.
Have you ever had a moment where you like, I don't know how else to convey it other than, or say it other than like, you're informed or called or told by the Holy Spirit that you need to go do this. You should go up and say this to this person. Your
Yeah.
wife was talking about it a
Yeah,
second
she
ago.
has those experiences.
Yeah. Like those moments where
Mhm. Yeah.
like this is what you should do, but it makes you uncomfortable
Mhm.
and you didn't do it.
Mhm.
imagine especially when it's in this relation, what we're talking, imagine the love that's withheld from somebody.
Yeah.
What if that's the moment? What if that's the last drop of water they need for it
Yeah.
to sprout into a joyous, wonderful life?
Yeah.
Or what if that's the first seed that they need for the next person to water? Like I've been feeling a lot of conviction about that lately because we talked about it downstairs when we were just catching up before this, but you talked about kind of like some of the weight almost that it comes with some of the teaching and some of the instruction that you receive, that it's like it's heavy, it's hard, it's a lot to download sometimes. And
Yes.
it's like, okay, but there is one very big thing. God says that when he comes back, that there will be people that will say, Lord, Lord, did I not prophesy in your name? Did I not cast out demons? Did I not perform miracles? And he will say, go away from me. I never knew you.
Yeah.
Because it's not about what we do.
Yeah. There's nothing
It's
we
about
can
our
do.
relationship, right? It's about
Mm-hmm.
knowing. Like,
Mm-hmm. There's
we have
not
a
enough we can do
relationship?
to ever compare to, what,
No, because it's
what,
not works, right?
yeah.
But like, what do you
It's,
want to be, though? I mean,
yeah.
faith. It's that's something I would love to do a study with you guys later on.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, and I just want to unpack it too. It's like, faith without works?
Mm-hmm.
Works without faith.
Yeah.
What does
Mm-hmm.
what's meaningful? We get saved by faith through grace, but if you have faith and your fruit doesn't show it, is
Yeah.
anybody gonna go up to that tree and replant that to continue on an orchard of joy and love that continues to spread across the world? No.
No, I think that's where a lot of the stereotypical, people who aren't believers or faithful, that they look at the stereotypical Christian and they're almost resentful of it, and it paints a bad picture, bad taste in the mouth.
Like
Really.
resentful and in what manner or towards
I
what
would say that
specifically?
people who are faithful but without works, that's just like,
Yeah.
you're just a Bible thumping, judgmental Christian versus,
Yeah.
maybe that's not what you meant.
No.
No.
I think I think I get the sentiment of what you meant, and it just so
Yeah.
happens to be, I I don't open up my Bible as much as I should.
Mm.
Maybe it was specifically for this purpose that I stumbled across it
Yeah.
in between Mark. So I've got a life in the Word study Bible. And I had a particularly rough day with my wife, and so when I do and I don't have the answers, I go into the Word of God, because I'm not going to reflect on myself and try and self-validate my own perspective, my own opinion, because I
Mhm.
genuinely believe that I have tried to rely on my own understanding and have wisdom, and I'm sure I'm going to in the future, but that has only made things worse.
Mm.
I found my Bible, and it talked about the 3 types of people. The people that haven't accepted God or reject God. Those who have accepted God but live worldly, or worldly Christians, or those who have accepted God and practice righteousness and glorification of God and love of others. And it's like, okay, I think if we're honest with ourselves, we all, at minimum, bounce between the worldly and the trying to be a righteous
Mhm.
person. But righteousness isn't earned, right? It's a gift of God. So
Mhm.
but it's when you know what you ought to do and you don't do it.
Yes.
Like, I'd say I have more conviction on so much conviction on when God would come back and say, I never knew you.
Mm-hmm.
Or how elated it would make me for God to come back and
Yeah.
say, well done,
Yeah.
my good and faithful servant.
Yeah.
I love being a firefighter. I loved being a medic. I loved being in the military. I love hunting. I love hiking. I love sports. I love anything outdoors. I love building stuff. I love doing this with you.
Yeah.
But I think I love doing this with you more than anything because of the substance of what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Because it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to talk about. We're going to get judged for what we're talking about for sure
Mm-hmm.
by our coworkers, our friends, our family, everybody. But it's meaningful,
Yeah.
right? What's hard is what's meaningful. And then
Well, I think back to what you were talking about is I did not know you. I think there's a lot of people in this world who are doing good things to end up in heaven. They're doing them to get themselves into heaven, versus like when you understand that there's nothing in this world that you can do that is going to be good enough to get you up there, because we're all sinful. Like, we will be forgiven, but if you're doing the things to bring other people with you up to heaven,
Yeah.
you're you're living the best that you can be. You're asking for forgiveness. You're growing and learning, and you're bringing other people into faith. Like that's what's going to matter, and having that relationship with God. Not doing this because if I do this, this is another tick towards my
Well, and that's got to be tough
tower
for
to
you with
heaven.
how you were raised, because you said you were raised in a
Exactly.
transactional.
Exactly.
And
So
I'd say I
that's
was
the
too,
like
but
the
like,
biggest light bulb that has
Yeah.
gone off recently for me is
how's that made dealing with your
Yeah.
family? Is your family, would you say, still largely transactional?
Yes and no. My father isn't.
There's been some growth in those avenues.
My father never has been.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been mainly my mother, unfortunately. It's very transactional.
Mhm.
Like literally yesterday, transactional. Like, you know, it was like, oh, I want to go on a date night with my wife. So my mom's like, okay, come clean the gutters.
Mhm. That's
So,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's, is that considered that seems transactional to me.
No,
but
it is
yeah.
very transactional, but you never
Yeah.
know. Like, and the tough thing is
Yeah.
at Snap, you and I probably want to judge that
Yeah.
behavior.
Maybe.
But
Yeah.
what was she taught?
Yeah. But and then I think
You
of
know, who
it, you
taught her
know,
that?
you know what? Maybe she is my mother. I could check in on her and maybe offer more help once in a while.
Or yeah, I was about to say, how could you kill that with kindness?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
be like, hey, if I were to ask you, maybe just ask her to watch the kids one of these times.
Mhm.
And then she'll give you that transaction and be like, wait, now that I know you need this done,
Mhm.
you're not watching the kids. I just wanted to hear something from you that you needed, and go do that thing.
Mhm.
Free of charge.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, that's the love of God, right? Doing something
Mhm.
that you're not responsible for doing.
Yeah.
Taking on something out of love
Mhm.
that's not your price to pay.
Ended up being a
It's
beautiful
hard
thing.
to want to do when you're
Mhm.
treated transactionally, but
Yeah.
it sucks. It's hard.
Mhm. But yeah, it was, and that's going over there, and it was interesting because it ended up being a beautiful thing where I didn't necessarily want to be there yesterday morning,
Yeah.
but I had a very good conversation with my mom. She was just so thankful to have me there, and I was like, okay, there is more to it than that. I'm looking at it a certain lens, but my neighbors, I don't understand why or what, but they just all came out of the woodworks, like 3-4 neighbors that I hadn't seen in 15 years, and approached, and because they saw someone cleaning the gutters, and they thought it was that Paul. And I just had these conversations of like childhood memories on like there, and you've gotten so big. You have kids that are 7 and 8 years old now. Like,
Mhm.
wow, how crazy is that? And just had just like a nostalgic feeling leaving, and like just very thankful that I did have a good childhood. And I should maybe check in on that once in a while, a little bit more.
Yeah.
It was I don't go over to my mom's house usually unless I'm doing something for her. Like maybe I should change that.
Well, and you said you got some good out of it with
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
you know,
Just-
interaction, that
yeah.
communicative
Yeah.
relationship with those other
Yeah.
people that you might not have otherwise had. What if
Mhm.
that's the seed?
I
What if
even
that's the
had
water opportunity?
I even had a neighbor
You know?
who, and she was all the way down the road, and I hadn't seen her in a long time. And
Yeah.
there were some issues with her because her son broke into our house when I was a teenager and stole things from us, and
Yeah.
we couldn't prove it. But I hadn't talked to her, just swore her off, and it was seeing her again. It was an opportunity to try to almost. She you could tell she's struggling, she's suffering, but she's still
Mhm.
she brought up God very quickly in the conversation on how she can't see out of her left eye, she can't drive anymore, but she's so thankful that she can still walk to the store. And
Well, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
There's so much to be
yeah, and
grateful for.
and she talked about Jimmy, her son,
Yeah.
and how it's just been hard, and he needs to change his life around, but it's not happening. So I was like, I don't know, that opportunity to do anything or what, but
And who knows how much
Yeah.
comfort or solitude it gave her to just
yeah,
be able to talk about it to you.
yeah.
And, you know, what you thought was
Yeah.
only potentially a bad thing.
I think it
A
was
transactional going
Yeah.
over there to clean the gutters.
uh-huh,
God can still take a bad thing and use it for good. God
Mhm.
doesn't make bad things happen,
yeah,
but he can use it for good.
yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
you know, how,
Yeah, it was just interesting. I hadn't seen her, and
Yeah.
since that night it all happened when I was a teenager. But she wasn't the one that did it. He was, but You know, I still asked how he was doing.
Oh yeah, and imagine
Yeah.
the impact that
Mhm.
clearly it's had on her,
Yeah.
or it made her feel, or it made her self judge. Or what if I didn't
Mhm.
teach in the right way? What's this because of me? He's doing this, like
Yeah.
where's the opportunity for
Mhm.
the forgiveness, the love to come back in there,
Yeah.
you know? But yeah, I think that's what a lot of people struggle with nowadays is determining that something was bad and that God causes bad things because we have free will. It's like, no, there's no love without free will. Like God
Mhm.
can't sit there and say, you have to love me. That's not loving.
Yeah.
Dr. Frank Turek has this in his presentation, and also wrote a book called I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. He
Mm.
does a presentation across college campuses. And he's like, okay, ladies, if you stand up, you ever have a guy who's pursuing you and you just don't want him to pursue you? I'm like, "Well, yeah. So would it be loving of that guy to sit there and say, no, I'm going to take you. I'm going to force you to love me.
Mhm.
Is that loving? No. He's taking away your free will.
Yeah.
So for God to be loving, he had to give us free will,
Mhm.
which with free will means that we're freely able to do bad things or bad things are able to happen or what we would consider negative to happen. Might have been perceived as negative to, oh, yeah, well, I'm going to watch your kids, you come clean my gutters. But God still meant that for good.
Mhm.
You had an interaction with somebody. And like you said, it's
Mhm.
that outlook. It's reflecting back on our childhoods, like we've talked about, or like how she's talking about her eye,
Mhm.
but she still has the struggle she's got going on with her vision, but she still has all this good.
Mhm.
Like, what and where's your aim? Is our aim to be angry at God and seek retribution?
Mhm.
I think it's a lot of the world right now. A lot of people push God away because they don't have, because they're angry. We've all been angry at God at times because of pain we've experienced, and we want to continue that hurt and that perpetual pain cycle. But
Mhm.
how would you explain to somebody if they were to ask, well, how is there such a loving God that you claim that does this in your life, that impacts your family and your wife in these ways, that has helped you from the time that you said from 13 to 23 or so, and then
Mhm.
23 to now as a father? How is there a loving God if all these bad things happen?
Yeah. Yeah. And like what you said, free will. Humans with free will, we have turned this earth. We've created our own ways of doing things, and we have the free will to live towards what you know we know is good and right if you're faithful.
Yeah.
And then you have the free will to not. And when humans are left unchecked, bad things happen. And then you have the whole spiritual warfare aspect of it,
Oh,
where
yeah.
you have the good and the evil. So it's it is warfare. So there's the evil side of things, planting things as well, as far as God planting things in the good people. So yeah,
How to carry it out in the day
yeah,
to day.
yeah. My brother's grew up disabled. He's autistic.
Mhm.
That's been very hard. Like why was he born that way? Wh- And that's one of the arguments that I'm still trying to figure out, because that's as far as free will goes, it's not really relevant because he was born that way.
But that's our
Um,
perception
well,
of,
actually, now that I almost even take that back,
yeah,
because um, it was like three or four things started being noticed a little bit differently.
yeah.
So, like, was it vaccinations, or was it
Mhm.
what was it? So maybe that was also a human factor as well
Mhm.
with autism. So, but
Oh, I
maybe
mean,
maybe
we're
but
facing
people
that.
are born with
Oh, yeah.
life changing disabilities, but are they here to bring the good out in others? No. I don't know if you've ever been around someone with special needs that's got such a bright personality,
Oh,
but
yeah, definitely.
like when on my first job outside of fast food, like my
Yeah.
first job outside of high school was working with disabled adults, and the
Mhm.
joy that they could bring to me.
Yeah. And then that's the thing though too, is like
Yeah.
I once had somebody who helped me open my eyes
Hmm.
to, they're not disabled, they're differently abled.
Hmm.
When you're around people like that, whether they have Down
Yeah.
syndrome or autism,
Hmm.
whatever it might be, you recognize that they almost have something a little bit more of though too.
Yeah, it's a
They might be lacking
good way
in
to
this
look at it.
area, but they've got something a little bit more of that you and
Hmm.
I don't have. You ever see somebody with Down syndrome that my brother and I used to joke, so we used to pray to have a kid who has Down syndrome because my God, they're the most loving people.
Mm-hmm.
They just give love and want to experience love and give love. But I wish I had that lovingness, accepting ability, and giving
Mm-hmm.
ability to that level.
Yep.
I wish I was enabled innately or inherently to have that. So
Yeah, I
I
don't
say they're
think I've
just
ever
differently
met
abled.
someone with Down syndrome that
Yeah.
hasn't been that way. That's very interesting.
Yeah, we grew up with
So
the
loving.
McDonald's across the street from us, and their
Mhm.
daughter had Down syndrome.
Mhm.
She lived, I think, until she was 54, 57. But you should go keep an eye just around in general, because obviously there's the intellectual things and what
Mhm.
we would consider deficits, but
Mhm.
such a beautiful soul, because the amount of love and kindness. And we just sit there, and when the Wii first iteration came out, and she loved it. And you could do this most simple things. And it was almost how we have the tendency to look at the negative, to look on that which is not good and judge it. Their filter is almost positive over
Mhm.
everything,
Yeah.
loving over everything. Like,
Yeah.
that's not, is that really a disability?
Mhm.
Or do we just choose to look at it that way?
Yeah.
Look, I wonder how much things what would be different in you if what did your brother enable in you?
Yeah. Well, I grew up very protective over him, and with my parents being
Yeah.
divorced, I felt like it was me and him. We had each other's backs, so I had to. Um, and it was different because as we grew up, it felt more normal, like a brother relationship. Like I didn't recognize too many things different. The older we got, the more
Yeah.
so when you start getting into teenagehood and stuff like that.
Mhm.
When it comes to like interest in girls or having relationships, or like, okay, we're gonna work, or we're gonna start learning to drive, or we're
Yeah.
getting into harder curriculum in school and stuff like that. Until that, seemed pretty normal. But he brought out protectiveness, having someone's back, being able to like help solve problems, take care of somebody who isn't getting it.
Patience.
Yeah, patience, lots of impatience. Maybe
So
had to
you
have a
should
good
say he
fight here
probably
and
made
there.
you a better father, right? Like what
Yeah,
you probably only were taught that was disabled. He enabled you to be
yeah.
a better father,
And there were bad
better
days
man.
too.
Yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
remember
I'm not trying to downplay that. I'm just saying, like,
my dad would be taking a shower because he worked nights, so
yeah.
he'd be taking a shower around 6:30, and we'd be home from school. And while my dad was in the shower, that was our time to let loose and fight.
Yeah. I think siblings do that to a degree, though, too.
He was a pincher and like Indian burn guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of those.
Yeah.
And I was just running around he's bigger than me.
Yeah.
He's older, he's bigger than me. So I'm like, oh boy, I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah. I mean, you still have the brotherly relationship.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah,
That
my
was
brothers
still
did that to me
existent.
too, man.
Yeah.
Stick you in a corner and just lightly
But
tap you in the same spot for an hour and a half.
yeah. Yeah, he taught me
Yeah.
a lot. And he made me a kinder person.
Yeah.
And just have a big heart because when I got to high school, he was 2 grades ahead of me. So I only spent freshman and sophomore year with him. And
Mhm.
then after he graduated, I was a peer tutor for with a disabled group through one of my classes and stuff. I'd go and assist them. I just wanted to be around
That's
them.
awesome.
And then my first job
Mhm.
outside of Burger King was being around them, working in home with them, helping develop their skills. And
Mhm.
it's just something I've always wanted to do, is help them out, that community out. And I don't know if that's why I was interested in the fire service, is being able to help, but it's
So,
different for sure. But yeah, it's relatable, I think.
definitely is.
Hmm.
Ain't everything that we can either choose to look at. You choose your focus,
Yeah.
whether it's all bad or it's all negative or it's not. Choose my aunt, bless her heart. I mean that in a good way. Not the southern way of pity them, but she's a great woman. Learned a lot from her, and especially in her walk with God. Was a teacher out at Nampa Christian for 20 plus years for kindergarten and pre-K, and she's really good at making herself like a child, like how God says we need to, because she teaches children and teaches them about God. But she always says, choose your hard. Choose what hard do you want? Everything's gonna be hard if you choose to look at it that way. But what hard do you want? Do you want to suffer the pain of discipline, or do you want to suffer the pain of regret?
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you want to suffer the pain of looking at all the things that it's not what it could be or what it should be? Or do you want to suffer the difficulty of looking at all that it could be in spite of? Either way, it's hard.
Yeah.
Either way, it's tough. But
Mhm.
what hard do you want to choose?
Yeah, no matter what, if you're on this earth, you're gonna have you'll have difficulties of hard life, and I look at it as okay. I'm here. When I die,
Yeah.
it's two things: there is something, or there isn't something.
Yeah.
Why not live my life towards there is something and have that faith? Because otherwise, it's over. It's gone. Like, what's the point?
Yeah.
Live a valuable life and bring that into
And we're
others.
responsible too.
Yeah.
I mean, you and
Yeah.
I bounce around different intellectual videos from Andrew Huberman to
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson back
Trying to
and
better
forth, but
ourselves, yeah.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
we have that responsibility too.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people are like, oh, what's purpose is where work and meaning collide. Like, what's my purpose in life?
Yeah.
And I read a paper on that in GC, what is purpose? And I was like, okay, you can do work, but if it doesn't have any meaning to you, it doesn't give you a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
You can have something that means a lot to you, but if you can't produce anything or do anything with it, then how are you being purposeful with it? It's that intent aspect you talked about earlier. And Jordan Peterson, he's got that thing where he's like, you got a responsibility just by the fact that you're alive to grow and do and be purposeful, to be meaningful, to take on that with which is hard. Be like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to learn it anyway. Like, that's the best way that we can show care to our wives, to our kids. We don't want to go deal with work, or no guy wants to sit there and be in a 9 to 5. Every guy would rather be with their family or, being out doing their hobbies or something like that, but doing what is uncomfortable, what they don't want to do to get the good result. Like, that's where that's life. That's how you make life worth it. Like, how do you add the value? What would you say add the value? What would you say is what you do that adds the value most to your life? Like, if you had to put your priority list in what gives you the most value and satisfaction in life,
Mm-hmm.
what would Paul's
Yeah.
what's most valuable to me to act out look like?
I think now that I have a family is leading down the right path, and I think that path is living towards more than what's here on earth, and having that faith in God and prioritizing that. Because you asked me 5-6 years ago, I'd say a very greedy person,
Mm-hmm.
like financially independent or financially successful.
Yeah.
Or, master a certain skill, which would end up leading to some sort of financial benefit.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I first met you, you were really
Mhm.
deep down into doing something
Mhm.
with your off time that was always like entrepreneurial all the time. It's not that you still don't have that entrepreneurial drive and spirit,
Yeah, and I
but
do.
you were like
Yeah.
always about trading or
Mhm.
always about something that was going to be the next venture to produce.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't have felt comfortable
Mhm.
taking this many hours out of your day
Mhm.
to have genuine conversation with God knows,
Mhm.
only knows
Yeah.
what somebody somewhere, even if it's one person that sees you talk about this like this.
Yeah, what you value is it's kind of like the people you hang around, your group of people that you hang
Yeah.
around. If you're valuing a certain thing, so let's say you're valuing money, you're worshiping money at that point.
Yeah.
You're focused on it, and you're not seeing what's around you that is truly beautiful. And you might not even, you value it to the point where you don't know that it's bad for you, potentially. Like, you're not seeing, you're blind, you
detriment,
got
yeah.
that lens on. You've probably heard of this. I know that you've probably heard of this just because we listen to similar things, but there's a experiment that Jordan Peterson talked about where basketball players were on a court and they were playing a game of basketball. They're so focused on the game, they didn't recognize that a gorilla walked across the court. A guy in a gorilla suit walked across the court during the middle of the game.
Yeah.
And let's say that's faith. Let's say the basketball game's the world, the human flesh, what they're focusing on, money or whatever they're focusing on, the game.
Yeah.
But that's Jesus walking across the court in a gorilla costume.
It is. And there's so much that this world tries to distract us with this. Like, this is the number one barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be used for good, obviously.
Yeah.
You're doing it right now. And kudos and props to you to taking that on. But
it's a leap.
There's so
Mhm.
much distraction in this world.
Yeah. They take the players aside after
Yeah.
and they're like, okay, good game. You know, you won, you lost, you know
Yeah.
it, you know the score. But what else? Like, what else do you
What else
know?
took
What
place?
happened during the game?
Well, and that distraction, right? That
It's
hit, that
like,
was what
yeah.
happened with Judas.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't I want you to do this to Christ. It was, let me
Mhm.
distract you with this 30 pieces of silver.
Yeah. Interesting.
What's our distraction now?
Yeah.
Judas wasn't got by anything but distraction. What God and Christ did for him wasn't still there.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't any less of an apostle in the moment that he was offered versus the moment that he wasn't. All the good was still there. He was distracted.
Yeah.
We are so distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Lord knows and I used to say fall victim to it now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was chose to be irresponsible.
Yeah, you almost turn. You know what you should be focusing on. There's a
Yeah.
point where you don't know, but then you start knowing, and then you choose not to. And that's I feel like so many people go through that where they live. Okay, when I'm an old man or when I'm older, after I live this life, I will commit or I will change. And
Yeah, it's
the longer you wait, the harder it is, and it's so tempting because there's so many things that we're distracted by that
Yeah.
seem intriguing. Like sin is tempting. Sin is very, the biggest sins that I've had to live through is lust,
oh yeah. Pornography is the huge
greed,
thing in our generation for men.
just like, like, you just as a man, it's so difficult, and because of all the distractions that we have,
Yeah.
you're just pumped full of it ever on your screens like throughout the day, and led down a wrong path.
Yeah, that's all that ball passing.
Yeah.
It keeps you from seeing the
Yeah.
gorilla walking right through the
Yeah.
court.
But yeah,
Like,
they asked him like, yeah, so what'd you think of the gorilla walking through? Like, no, that didn't happen. It's funny though. And then they showed him the footage.
I would say that's the biggest downfall too of like
Yeah.
our society here in
Yeah.
America. Capitalism is the best thing that we've had thus
Uh-huh.
far, I would say, of any model across the world and throughout history. But it still fails because it makes people be a lover of things
Mm-hmm.
and a user of people. And it's at direct conflict to the gorilla walking across the court to God, which is
Mhm.
we're supposed to. And even if you ask most people, whether they claim to have faith or not, should you be a lover of things and a user of people, or should you be a lover of people and a user of things?
Yeah. The latter.
Because one
Mhm.
says you're supposed to be and that's where I'd say, like, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
By that, I mean, I think it takes way more to believe, and everything at me screams that there is, at minimum, let's not go with the Judeo-Christian subset of God,
Yeah.
but there's way more that you have to have faith in, which means choosing to believe in that with which you don't have evidence for, or filling in the gaps to be atheistic than to have faith. Like, take DNA. What is it? That 2.3 trillion letters long
Mm-hmm.
in you. That's just in you. And if you were to sit there and write the
Mhm.
numbers all the way up to 2.3 trillion, you couldn't do that in your lifetime by the time you die.
Mm-hmm.
It would take eons. We're talking like millennia, thousands of years
Yeah.
of people going back to back. And yet, that's just the information contained in you.
Mm-hmm.
Would you tell me that if I put a book, I brought you a book somewhere, but would you tell me that, my wife back here short. Would you tell me if I put a book in front of you and it's got 2.3 trillion letters in front of it?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, this book has no author. Like, yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence
Yeah,
doesn't
that's a
support
good
that,
point. I thought of
So
that,
there's
yeah.
so much evidence
Mhm.
around us, the fine tuning of our universe, the fine tuning of Earth,
Mhm.
the morality.
Yeah.
I don't have enough faith that everything happened by accident. And a lot of people like to sit there and think that the two understandings of that science has, which science is, to me, science just is the explanation of God's natural world, and that with which we also, and attempting to try and explain that with which we don't get and which isn't self-evident. But the Big Bang
Mhm.
and God go right together with one another. Something came from nothing.
Mhm.
Now, to sit there and say that something came from nothing, that's illogical, right? That doesn't follow an atheistic framework.
It's a
because
dimension we don't understand.
Exactly.
We don't have seeing. We can't see it.
We
We
don't.
don't have comprehension. So it's interesting to find out when we go away from this place.
Yeah. Where is that dimension
So,
we're gonna go?
Yeah.
You know, but and God said, in the beginning, let there be light, and everything sprang to weird. It's
Mhm.
exactly how Stephen Hawking said everything came down to a singularity
Mhm.
that cannot be gauged on its mass or its density. And that's what God is too.
Mhm.
God put forth together space, time, matter. What is God? Isn't limited by space, isn't limited by time, is immaterial. Or to say that you have this infinite, immaterial, all everywhere, all time
Mhm.
being, that's just what we call God. And for something to come into existence, it couldn't have previously existed.
Mhm.
That's illogical.
Yeah.
Like there's certain logical consistencies that
Yeah.
not even God can break. He can't make a square circle.
Yeah.
The defining of this universe that he created with its bounds, with its natural law, which is what we call it supernatural, is that with which we can understand.
Mhm.
What we call God is not in these bounds because it couldn't have existed for it to come into existence. If God was bound by space, time, and matter, it couldn't have been made at that explosion of the singularity that Stephen Hawking says. So they really work in symbiosis. And John Lennox, C.S. Lewis, Dr. Frank Turek, Cliff Nettle, they all go over that very much so that way people can have reason and understanding. But I think we get distracted from that. People don't want to go down the rabbit hole. And we get distracted from conversation like this because people want to love things and use people.
Mhm.
And that's a really long way to segue into.
Yeah. Well,
I love it and I appreciate you.
yeah.
I want to give you this.
This is going to wrap it up because you're going to be on here like 500 more times probably.
Maybe.
It's probably took forever, but we've been going for a while.
Yeah, but I want you to have that as your second guest. I'm gonna give it to you first.
Yeah.
I know you like wolf stuff, and this is my favorite coffee mug.
You can hear all this ASMR stuff.
Yeah, there you go. It's my favorite branded coffee mug, and I get it from my dad.
Oh, cool.
So you or people who see the pictures that you asked me to send in, you'll see my dad, who very much why the way I am. And it's not because he was a perfect man, but because he was humble in his struggles as he grew.
Mm-hmm.
But he loves, it's called an Odigiri Bell. And it's great, especially, you don't have it.
Yeah.
But for guys with mustaches.
Yeah, I used to.
And you're a lefty. That's a left-handed mug because most of the graphic displays.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's it kind of reminds me of like Native American artwork or something like that. It's really cool.
Yeah, I've got tons of all different designs, but
that's awesome.
I know you like the whole wolf thing.
Mm-hmm.
Talked about that before. I can get to know you as a friend, and
well, thank you, man.
I love and appreciate you as a person, and I appreciate you having me on here to be able to.
Yeah, this is something that I think is a new chapter in my life, an opportunity to be able to talk about. Well, today what we talked about was a huge step in the right direction, I think. And like you were saying, it might be difficult or it might be judged upon, but at the same time, there are people who want to hear it.
Yeah.
And just building something beautiful out of it, and just it had no direction.
Yeah.
We just talk about what comes to mind, and I want to be able to have that. And you're a great person to have for that. So to have you on here and to be able to do that has been awesome. And you're going to be on here a lot more.
I appreciate you having me on.
And it's an excuse to get together.
Yeah.
Because
we need more of.
We need to do more of. And I really appreciate the gift. Yes.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
It's been a lot like most of the conversations you and I have when we're alone or when we're at work or whatever else anyway. So.
Yeah, and it seems like it's funny because when we get the opportunity to work together on shift, we'll be talking, but it gets cut off because of work distractions. Responsibilities.
Distractions, man.
So it's like, man, if we didn't have work.
Can you imagine? Imagine the love that would go around without all the distractions.
Yeah, but I also say work is a good place to maybe start some of those seed plantings.
Yeah, it can be used for good things, just like technology. So, you're absolutely right. I appreciate you.
But yeah, to be continued.
Definitely.
Thank you, brother.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You know.